Hey guys, we're going to go over pretty much almost the end of this Cobra Shelby intake and the insane amount of work it took to get it even close to where we need to. We're going to take a look at it with its final plenum work. If it may not be the easiest thing in the world to notice, you'd have to go back to the last video of this, but the plenum is a completely different shape. Okay. Both plenums had about as much metal taken out as you practically want to do. And these are completely different shapes than they used to be. They've been moved over quite a bit. How much? Well, remember, these were an oval. Okay? They're no longer an oval. The reason to do that is you need to treat this like a short side. It needs to be as wide as possible. Okay, and there was plenty of metal. I mean, it may not be possible for you guys to see it, but if you take a look from here to here on this corner here, we probably have less than 1/10 of an inch there. Okay, so the plenum actually gets a slight bit wider as it goes down, which doesn't hurt. The plenum volume is going to help because it is a high RPM piece. This is going in a high RPM 292, destined for 8,500 RPM with a manifold that was originally designed for about 6,500 RPM. So it needs all the help it can get. Okay. When we also opened up this plenum, this runner has a much better line of sight than it had before. This one was completely choked off before, and it has a small line of sight here. It's over about as much as you can. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how even the runners are. From runner to runner, short runners and long runners flow almost the same. The discrepancy is minimum. And then we also test it with this beautiful Wilson tapered. Notice the way the manifold has been modified, okay? If we put this on and take a look, it all lines up at this point. Actually had an interesting conversation with Brian Salter about how he organizes his spacers so they're all identical. He uses roll plugs, which is an excellent idea. I do it a little bit differently. I like to make the plenum slightly larger. No matter which way they put it on, it's not going to make a difference. Notice this plenum is not completely finalized, otherwise when it goes down, you wouldn't be able to see that edge. In any case, it's pretty darn close to where it's going to be. Okay, you can see, you get as far as you can. Even with the 9-inch burr, it is not possible to get all the runners. So, like I said before, making it huge here and making it huge here where you can get to it easily isn't really going to help this section in here. Now, this section in here, you can get in there with some little sandcloth. Stretch it around there, and at least you could take this inside edge and smooth it a little bit, which would help a little bit. It's also good to get your inside radiuses, especially your lower plenum. Very difficult to get in there with a burr. So the sandcloth really helps. Figure hours of work with the sandcloth. Okay, you see that angled line on the floor? That's how far you can get in if you go from the short port number 3 into the plenum. Okay? Notice how rough the texture is. That's there for a reason. Notice how smooth it is on the apexes of those turns. That's for a reason. Okay, I don't know if it's going to be obvious, but this requires a ridiculous amount of work to make it actually happen. Same thing with a different port. Okay, that was number 6. And number 7. You know, these lower plenum short ones have a relatively bad transition from the plenum to the runner. Okay, but you run out of metal There's only so much you can do. Otherwise, you'll break through the casting. Which, of course, if you really wanted to, you could get a lot more out of this with some serious welding. That's not part of this project, though. This is pretty much maxed out in an unwelded form, I would say. Okay, this is the sheet you guys have seen before. Last time you saw it was deeper notch plenum work. So I took these numbers from our last flow and I transposed them to here. So the top black numbers are off the other page. Okay, and then I said serious plenum work. That's the blue numbers. We're going to go through those now. Okay, we went from 260 to 263.4, 255.7 to 253, not great. 235 to 255.4, that's more like it. That really took a beating when I did that original deeper plenum notch. I actually talked to my friend Bill Carlquist from Carlquist Performance in Connecticut. He knows everything there is to know about these manifolds and these heads. And as a matter of fact, I got some info on the heads we're using. The ones that have the guides 60 thousandths too close together was a mismanufactured set of junk that he's told the guy to throw away. Somehow I got one. So FYI, this would definitely be easier if the guides were in the right places and I could use the right size valves. Just go into a 194.16 would make a huge difference. And he did talk about this manifold and how much plenum divider to take out, because I'm not afraid to ask. I know he knows it. He's regularly builds 500 plus 289s and 292s. And I told him where I was with the notch, and he's like, you're done. Don't take any more out. You're good. So that worked out really well for me, and I appreciate his help. Okay, where did we leave off on this? I think we didn't get to this one here. 242 went to 252. So relatively close. This one's a little bit better, which is unusual for a long runner, but that's the way it worked out. Okay. Other side, 246 to 253, the nice jump. 263.6, now these are the ones that are the upper ones that look like a tunnel ram. They picked up even more. It really doesn't surprise me. But notice how even they are from one to the other. Okay. And we picked up a little bit from here, 243 to 254. Okay. Now we're going to take it and we're going to put the Wilson 4-hole tapered spacer on. So that is the bottom numbers. Went up a tiny bit, up a tiny bit, down a tiny bit, down a tiny bit, up a tiny bit, down a tiny bit, down a tiny bit, up a tiny bit. So we can take a look at it. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the way the tapered spacer is made, okay, the way it has these little notches here makes it a little bit easier for the plenum to share the barrels. I've always liked spacers like this. I build them myself. I take a 4-hole and I make my own because I can make a more aerodynamic design than this with a grinder. This is a nice piece. I give Wilson credit for making this. This is a nice piece. I think it's only about 1 inch high. But it definitely does make a difference the way the air flows. Let's take a look at it on the manifold. Okay, it may take some work to focus this, but you can see the way I have the divider shaped, okay, and the way it can share air between the barrels. Remember, upper plenum, a little bit tougher to get air into, right? So the air comes through, it gives it a nice big window that it can go down those runners. Makes a difference, and it'll certainly make a difference. There's a couple different things you really need to think about, right? We think about reversion. Is it going to make a difference as far as reversion? Well, that's a good question. If you really wanted it to be anti-reversion, they would be dead straight. Okay? The air would come right out of the barrels. It'd be dead straight. There'd be like a lip literally an anti-reversion lip. That's not designed like this. This is designed more for maximum flow. Okay, let's take a look at it from this side. Obviously, these barrels straight down, right? These barrels, it actually looks like this divider is over this side a little bit. And if we look at it without this, it does look that way. The way this plenum is shaped, this distance here is more than this distance here. That's the way it was cast. Interesting, right? Okay, other side. Now, if you look at it this way, right, you've got a decent angle going right to those lower. Let's say we go through this way, right, from this barrel over. It's got a decent approach angle now. Better than without it. Better than without the spacer, right? Now, will this work better than an open? That's one of the things the owner of this is going to have to test. I'm going to say that I think this is a great setup the way it is. It's relatively even from runner to runner. And if you pay attention to the manifold I did that I ported up for Eric, that's very even runner to runner within 11 CFM. And it made a lot more horsepower and torque than the bone stock Super Victor. In any case, let's take a look at this. We took a look at it from that side. We took a look at it from above, straight down, right? Straight down. What can we say about it as it is? Well, it was a ton of work, let me tell you, to get it to this point. And even at that, it can barely hold up with the heads. The heads are flowing about 260, 261 right now. So the manifold will be holding it back a little bit. Can we still get to our 500 plus horse? Well, we're going to find out. The guy does own a dyno, so he will give us some feedback at some point. Let's take a look at that sheet one more time. Okay, a little quick math. Right, subtract our highest flowing from our lowest flowing. We got 21.7 CFM. Now, does that mean I'm going to work on this one a little more? I probably will. I don't know if I'm going to show you that or not. But that may not make any change whatsoever because of the construction of the manifold and the way those runners intersect with the plenum. What's the purpose of making such a big plenum? That's actually a really good question. I'm glad you asked it. The bigger the plenum makes the engine think the carburetor is bigger. Now, this has already got, I believe it's a 770 carburetor, which sounds massive for a 292-inch engine. But it will be high RPM. And if you take a look at the way it's designed, now that it has a decent-sized notch, notice it doesn't go all the way down to the bottom of the plenum. That was not what I was informed to do. And I'm glad I stopped where I did and did a bunch of research on it before I changed anything else. That seems to work out really well where it is. But making the plenum bigger and working on those short side radiuses where the plenum turns 90 degrees, not an efficient design, right? Literally, the air is going to be pulled in this kind of a direction, right? It's going to be pulled this way. It's going to be pulled this way. It's even going to be coming from this way and then turning, okay? There's quite a bit to think about on manifolds, and I'm getting, I mean, I'll be honest, I was thrilled when Eric dynoed that manifold and it did as well as it did. Really, it made me think that all the work that I've been doing all these years was correct, because none of my stuff had been, none of my manifolds have been dynoed to this point, so that really felt good. Not afraid to say it. All right, guys, I think we talked about this enough. This is going to be the way it is, I think. Maybe a few little tweaks, and it doesn't really even have a final gasket match. I don't have any gaskets the right size, so I have to actually purchase some. But thanks for hanging out. I have to have wifey splice these 2 videos because I touched the damn button again. But at least she knows how to do that at this point. I don't have to bother Sophia to do it for me. Thanks for hanging out. Have a good night.